I had photographed the Brooklyn Gang for about a year, and that work was published, and it was kind of well known. And I applied for a Guggenheim Fellowship to do Youth in America. And someone suggested that I join a group of college, basically college students and other people on a freedom ride. First freedom ride was burnt, and all the freedom riders were beaten and jailed at Anniston, Alabama in 1961. A few months later, John Lewis organized the second bus ride, of which I joined. And that bus ride from Montgomery, Alabama to Jackson, Mississippi, sensitized me to something that was wrong in America. And youth in America became the youth of the civil rights movement. And I worked on the civil rights movement photographs for the next 3 years. During the Selma March, I was introduced to Mrs. Annie Blackman, who was a sharecropper who lived in a, I can't dignify what she lived in, but it's a shack. And she had 10, 11 children, I think 1 or 2 died at childbirth. But nevertheless, I was introduced to Annie Blackman and in 1965 during the Selma March. And about 10 years ago, I found the Blackman family again in the South. And Alicia is now an insurance agent helping the farmers in that area obtain insurance, which is important to have if you have a tractor and it's dangerous. I've also met all her brothers and sisters. This is Levester, who is carrying firewood in the cabin for his mother, but today he has a trucking air conditioning company and drives a brand new huge pickup truck and holds a Bible in his hand. And and one of the children, Alma Blackman, is now the head legal librarian at the state capitol in Montgomery, Alabama, and holds a master's degree in library science and wears hand-tailored clothing. So, you know, that was because of the Civil Rights Voting Rights Act, and the children could get a better education, the younger children. The older children still have trouble reading or writing, if they're living. Anyway, so photographs come back to haunt you, and I feel that my photographs are my children. And I love all my children, and they all have meaning, and they all open up a journey of consciousness for me through all my life's work, which isn't finished right now. I'm still challenging myself and opening myself to reality. Circus, Widow Montmartre. Well, first is Widow Montmartre, circus, Brooklyn Gang, civil rights. It was all done with a little Leica. I was very stealth. I was thin, I was quiet, I was almost invisible. Before you knew it, I snuck up on you. East 100th Street was a different story, because there, at that time, and that came after the civil rights photographs, I understood what people were going through in New York City, in my hometown. And I understood that while we were sending rockets to the moon at that time in the mid-60s, we were neglecting the center city altogether. And there I felt that people would feel exploited if I walked around with a little camera. So I decided to work with a large format 4x5 view camera with a tripod and a strobe and a little portfolio that I would carry. And it was an eye-to-eye relationship. They would have, my subject would have to want to collaborate in this photograph. And also I wanted to be able to see the great depth and detail in those photographs. And I wanted them to be still, quiet and still. It was important in a city block that's very vibrant to find something that's still. Anyway, that became another thing. Now, while I don't do digital photography, because if I did, no one would believe anything I ever did again. I haven't poo-pooed it completely out of my mind, but I still am a dinosaur in that I get my hands wet in the dark.
Yeah.
And I choose fiber paper.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, the Brooklyn gang photographs, when I finished, after 11 months, I sent them to Esquire magazine, and they hired Norman Mailer to come back out to the gang with me to write. So Mailer spent a few days with the gang and with me in Prospect Park and in the neighborhood. What happened was I needed model releases from the parents at that time. And so Esquire gave me a certain amount of money, and I gave all the money to Benji to pass out to the people who were in the pictures that were going to be. I'm not sure he ever passed the money out. We got something that looked like a release back from all the kids' parents, but I'm not sure it's their signature. Alex Lieberman, who was the director of photography at Vogue magazine, in fact, all of Condé Nast magazines, had lunch with Cartier-Bresson, the famous French photographer, and asked Bresson if that young Bruce Davidson could do fashion. And Bresson's answer, I was told, was, look, if the kid can do gangs, why can't he do fashion? So they gave me a big fat, he called me in his office, and they gave me a big fat contract, and they asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I'd like to go out to Mount Palomar because I like astronomy, and they gave me a model, and the model is this size, and the picture of Mount Palomar. And he called me in his office, and he said, Bruce, we love you, you're a genius, but you've got to get closer to the model. Anyway, I began the civil rights photographs of Freedom Ride, and et cetera, about the same time that I began doing fashion. And I was doing about a third of Vogue at the time. And there was, something came crashing down on me. How could I equate photographing tall fashion models who were too tall for me, and at the same time drive around the South photographing farm migrant camps, child labor, and all the rest. So I stopped doing fashion photography. And I lived simply. I had a one-room skylight. My apartment was about the size of this room. I had a mattress on the floor, a dying chiffonnier tree, and a skylight, and a darkroom kitchen combination with a red light in the refrigerator. And chicken at the same time. Things have not changed that much. I no longer have a ruby light in my refrigerator, but in the last 3 years, I've gone through every photograph I've ever taken and printed those photographs that have never been seen before, plus some that have. And it's taken me almost 3 years. I have 1,200 individual photographs, but I've, of course, printed more than one copy of each. And I have a darkroom in the apartment, a secret darkroom that the landlord doesn't know about. And typically I wake up at 4:35 in the morning, go right into the darkroom, print to 2 in the afternoon. I've been doing that for 2.5 years. And now I'm pretty much through with it. Steidl is going to publish all my work, life's work, in several volumes. We haven't quite decided how many volumes. And I haven't quite decided whether I'm going to publish every photograph I ever took. I have to see what the emotional connection, what the journey of consciousness is, and where I am today before I'll commit to it.